Well, thanks for taking my call. But the timing, I guess, surprised us a little bit today. But, the concept there, what we're talking about, reducing the number of seats in the legislature, is nothing new certainly to me. Mm-hmm. It's something that I've been talking about for, a couple of years now at least. And really, I guess you could go back really since the last provincial election. But for me, it was about a whole package of legislative reform, which included, as we've already announced in the past too, is a review of MHA pensions, reduction in the number of seats, I believe is important in all of this, and better use of committees within the House of Assembly. But certainly reduction in the number of seats is something that I support. It's just that the timing in all of this seems a bit awkward and odd, given the fact that, we're so close, so late into a mandate, and if this was something that the Premier or this government wants to do, is something that they've had a number of years to do, and yet they refuse to do it.
So how do you see this? Well, where's this coming from, or what's the intent here in your estimation, given that they've said, I don't even know if it's possible, I don't know what the process is or what are the hoops you have to jump through to get changes like this in place, but what are they doing it now for?
Well, interesting enough, so just about the process right now, I'll just speak to that briefly, Pete, is we have a Electoral Boundaries Act, so a piece of legislation that really deals with this stuff, and this is something that they deal with through the appointment of a committee. The chair is appointed by the Chief Justice, so we have a committee that every 10 years by a legislative review of the boundaries within the province, which includes Labrador as well. Within that decision, there is a number, because people always ask about the number of constituents and the number of people living in a district. There's an allowance given for this, and within the island portion in 2006, what they allowed for was a 10% variance of the average, so you could be 10% less or 10% more. And in Labrador, of course, because the large geography of Labrador, that variance was a little bigger than that. It was actually around 25%. So we have an established process in the province right now for this to happen. In 2006, however, when we went through this process, which was in place for the 2007 election, they were stuck at 48 seats because the legislation speaks to 48 districts. So I believe, and the opinion that I've expressed in the past is that needs to be changed so that we could allow the Commission not to have the number of seats cast in stone. Let's do an independent review, speak to the people around the province so that we can actually put, what I believe to be an appropriate number of districts in the province. And I've been on record as saying that I believe that 40 would be a number. And, and really, once the committee did its work, it could be a few less than that. Who knows? But I think we need to take the politics out of it. No political interference. Let the Commission do their work, and they would come back, based on their discussions with the people in the province, and let them determine what the appropriate number would be.
What would this do to all the work that your party has already done to hold nominations and have so many of your candidates already in place?
Well, it's to me, as I said, it's very odd given the fact that we have fixed election dates. So in order for it to change, this is what would have to happen, Pete, before, let's say the latest that the Premier would go, could go is October, is in the fall of 2015, and I said, this Premier really has put the politics back into picking an election date, and not only will he tell us which month it is, he won't even tell us which season it is, for goodness sake. So really right now, there needs to be, I think, first of all, the Premier should tell the people of this province, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, when the election is. So let's, first of all, determine that. Now, if he wants to go through this process, well, there would need to be amendments to the legislation that would have to happen. That could only happen within the House of Assembly. Then, of course, I'm guessing he's just not going to assign those himself. At least I hope that's not what he's thinking about. There would have to be a consultation process around the province, and then determine, what the appropriate number of seats would be. All of that would have to happen and get ready for an October election of this year. That's unlikely that could happen. So the only way that to do all this work before a next election would have to go back into the House of Assembly and change the fixed election dates. So, and I believe people in the province would definitely see that as political interference.
Oh, let me ask you this. Should you then be successful in forming government after the next provincial election, provided all this doesn't happen, will this be in place for the election following that? Is this something you're committing to now and getting the process started early to see a reduction from, say, 48 to 40 or so?
Absolutely, Pete. You can expect, from a government that I would lead, a review of the MHA pensions. We said that you would see an improvement in the committee structure and the way the activity amongst committees and dealing with legislation within the House of Assembly, and you would definitely see a reduction in the number of seats within this province. I believe that MHAs, based on the technology that we have in the province, the ability to get around this province right now, that we can actually, deal with our constituency work with a less number of seats, and I'm on record of saying that.
Could it be potentially even fewer than 40, depending on what the the study and the discussion comes back with?
I believe it could be, and the determination on what the appropriate number to have an effective government. I mean, there is I believe it could be less than 40, but when you think about, you need a cabinet, I still believe you need effective opposition, you need a certain amount of, MHAs that could actually add, our so-called backbenchers right now that could actually support a government. So I think there's a number that you need to have a effective and functioning government, but is the number 40? It could be potentially a few seats less than that for sure.
Okay, because at 40, as I've worked out in my math at least, it would still put us well ahead of, for instance, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Not that population is the only thing. Obviously, we have an awful lot of land mass here, and there are other cultural considerations as well, and how you would determine those buffers, those percentages in terms of the rural versus urban ridings, etc. I mean, there's a large variance there. We could end up with as few as, I suppose, depending on how you look at it, 30 up to somewhere where we are now, at 48. Yeah. But this certainly would have to be considered the top end, and it used to be higher.
Absolutely, you're right. And I mean, Labrador as an example right now, we use, Torngat Mountains as an example of a district that would not have a lot of population. But when you look at the geography and the ability to get around without a road network and those sorts of things, these are all things that this is all part of the legislation that we have currently in place. And, these variances and these little uniquenesses that we see within the province, they're all part of this decision. I believe the decision is best made by, an independent committee, and that's their job to go and review this and recommend to a government what the appropriate amount would be.
Since I have you, and since you brought it up, what would your personal perspective be on a fair and equitable pension situation for MHAs? Currently, I think you have to have been elected twice and served a total of 5 years or something in that vicinity. What's more reasonable and perhaps the future for us?
Well, what I know is what we have now. It's certainly defined as a gold-plated pension plan. I believe that is the case, and there's been it needs to be reviewed. And I think we need to do a jurisdictional scan of what is happening in other provinces. But right now, currently, change must happen with the current MHA pension plan. What that number is, a lot of provinces have gone to kind of a defined amount, and there's a set amount that goes into an MHA pensions. But again, there is a committee that's struck after every single election, the general election that we have in the province. We've had 2 reviews of this already, and we have not had the pension changes that I believe are required. And again, this is something, you put this to your committee, they come back, they do the jurisdictional scan. There definitely needs to be changes made in this, Pete. But you're right. Right now, it's two general elections, I believe it is, and 6 years or something. These are the terms that are set out in the current pension plan, but absolutely, definitely needs to be changed.
So something else that would be reviewed and changed between this coming election, should you be successful, and the next one?
Absolutely, and the other thing that would need to be considered is, certainly, at what point is the pension triggered? Is it, what the age group would be? Is that appropriate? So there are all kinds of things that, people that do this, for the business, do this for the work, that they would take a look at this, compare us to other provinces and put in what I think would be a fair pension system.
Mr. Ball, I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pete. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.